My name is Clay Williams, and this is People Talks, presented by Canal Pursuit Productions. The idea behind People Talks is that everyone has a story, and everyone's story has value. People Talks is a mixture of people with lived experience and people working in the fitness and mental health fields. This week's guest is Noel Payne. Noel is a dad, a runner, a race walker, a writer, and a former Royal Canadian Air Cadets captain. I was an Air Cadet when I was younger. He's also an advocate for healthy, active living and mental health. Noel has run track, trails, marathons, and ultramarathons, and in 2020 set a Masters Ontario race walk record. For almost 10 years, he's been sharing his struggles and victories on social media to help himself connect with others and show others that they are not alone. Welcome to People Talks.
Glad to be here. We've never connected in person, but we have crossed paths on social media and chatted. So it's a real pleasure to chat with you, Clay. That's really cool.
Yeah, I'm glad we were finally able to connect on this venue. I think I talked to you on the I Run podcast a few years ago. It might have been the first year I did the Canal Pursuit.
Yeah, I think
my memory is a little sketchy. It was probably during the event, and by the time I got to Ottawa, I honestly wasn't all there anymore.
I know exactly what that's like, and I will correct you in terms of you were an Air. I think we talked. You were an Air Cadets. I was a Royal Canadian Air Force, so the real Air Force. So I was an Air Force captain. So.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's okay completely. I may have. My fingers are big and make a lot of errors. So if I put the wrong thing, that's Royal RCAF. So I hung out of a few helicopters and did a few exercises and operations in my days. So
awesome. We'll have more to talk about later for sure. I kind of know what you do for a living, but there's always something that we do that we're passionate about that is aside from that. People Talks is one of my things, I guess, but you are, as the introduction kind of showed, you're an advocate for mental health. What does that look like? What are you doing? What do you do?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, as you said, I have my brain is constantly moving. My brain's working at like 3,600 RPM all the time. I've got lots of projects. I'm busy. I run, I write. I've actually had a podcast like yourself. So we have a lot of things in common that way. I'm always enjoying meeting people. And I'm an advocate for healthy, active living and mental health. I've been active and a runner for 30 plus years. And really took care of myself physically. But the mental health aspect of things really popped its head up when I became a dad a few years back. My daughter's now 6 years old. And that's where it just felt like everything I got squeezed down, and everything I hadn't been addressing popped its head out at that point. I had trouble transitioning to being a dad and the changes that brings in life and everything. And it brought an end to my marriage. I struggled and I hit a real low. So for me, I hit a dark place, and I had never struggled with mental health before. And that's what brought me into that world of mental health, and realizing that how important it is for someone who was just mainly focused on, being fit and running and active and everything else. I hadn't really thought about, what you do to maintain your mental health, or what it might be like to struggle with that issue. So that's what brought me on board into the mental health world.
Yeah, I think that was probably around the same time that I started to get involved. It was 2015, and there was quite a bit of media coverage about our military and veterans and first responders struggling with PTSD. Really came into the press, right? And it's funny being an athlete, you definitely understand the mind-body connection. What late in an event, when your body says no more, your mind takes over and says, oh yes, there's more. So I think it was kind of interesting, at least for me, as I started to understand a little bit about mental health, and how our Canadian system deals with it or fails to deal with it, or depends how you want to look at that. It's far more important. We're far more an integrated system than we're brought up to believe, right? I mean, there's physical health, and there's mental health, and it's so compartmentalized, and it's I've come to learn that that may be how it's treated, but that's not how we function as people, right?
Yeah, I've seen a big shift over the last. I mean, it came into my world, and I realized the importance of mind and body. But even sort of, in our my school days, and then into the early work life and everything else, I don't remember being on the news or really paying much attention. Maybe I wasn't paying attention. But I think I would say in the last real 10 years, it's really made the news. It's in policies in workplaces, it's in government. People are speaking out more, they're sharing more. So I think I came at a good time to start sharing, because it seems to be more open and talked about now. There's room for improvement. But yeah, it was very interesting as an athlete to sit back and realize what kind of connection there is between mind and body. And for me, it was really realizing that my running had always been something that helped me mentally, helped even me out. And then when I started struggling, it didn't solve everything, but by staying active, it sort of broke that cycle too, that depression and anxiety want you to do of doing nothing, and then make you feel bad about doing nothing, which of course then wants you to still do nothing. So being active helped me sort of clear my head, do something, get up, break that cycle, and move towards finding tools for my mental health toolkit, and for finding ways to maintain my mental health. For me, physical activity's always been part of that. So,
yeah, for sure, and for a lot of people, and for good reason. The chemicals that our bodies produce have an effect on our brain. Mental health is a lot about the brain. So you've been a runner for quite a long time. When did you run your first marathon? Has it been mostly running?
Oh yeah, I have been running for over 30 years. I had to do the quick calculations, so about 35, 36 years now.
Since you were 5.
We'll say that. Yeah, that works. Let's go with that. And it's always been running. I don't know why. My father gave me an old Timex watch when I was out in the country. I would run laps around the house. When I was 12 years old, we lived 19.1 kilometers from home. I know that because we got somebody in the car to measure it.
Yeah.
And I would give my school bag to one of the teachers who drove by our house, and they would drive by and throw the school bag at the bottom of the driveway. And I would run from the high school. I would run from the high school home. So the kids would my friends would go by in the school bus, and I'd be running home. So that's how things started.
Yeah.
I ran track, and then I waited to run a marathon. I mean, I ran track, and I found a track club. I ran track. I ran cross country. I think my first marathon was which one was the first one? I have very interesting stories. If you want, my first marathon was an accident. So I was training for the Picton Marathon, which is not far from outside sort of Ottawa. Really, it's a great little quiet marathon. Love it. But I was going back home. I was in Ottawa at the time. Went back home to Nova Scotia, where I grew up, and with some friends. And I had a 20-mile training run to do. And they said, "Well, this is the Nova Scotia Marathon. It's the original one. It's off on the South Shore. It's like 100 people running it, and not all of them running the marathon." So I said, "Great, I got a 20-miler to do. I'll go down there. I'll start, and then I'll pull off after 20 miles, and we'll call it a day. Good way to get in, get a good run in." So the marathon goes, we all start off, and there's two of us in the lead, me and this other guy who I know. And I'm not racing, so I kind of would grab him water along the way, give him water, and just do him whatever. And we're going out, sort of running with each other, doing half decent pace. And so it finally gets to the 20-mile mark, and I've just about had enough. It's a rural marathon. There isn't a whole bunch.
Right.
The turnaround point was a guy in a lawn chair on the middle of the road. So we and it's fog. And so at 20 miles, I stopped. I had a pee in the bush, and I waited for my friends to come by with the car. And they come by a few minutes later, and they said, no, you've got 6 miles left. You got to finish. And I went, really?
You're not going to give me a ride?
So I sucked it up, and I started running, and that's when the skies opened up. And for my last 5 miles, it poured rain.
Oh, man.
And I still finished. I think I finished third, like 2:54, and qualified for Boston on my first one by accident.
Oh, man.
So that was my first marathon.
Nice.
And all my runs ever since have pretty much been very interesting adventures. So
yeah. Well, what was your first ultra?
First ultra marathon was, I think, a year or so after I ran Boston Marathon, which was in 2011. 2012, I did with no thought, absolutely no brains. I don't know what I was thinking. I said, I did some training run where I did 50K, and I said, well, 50, I wonder how much further I can go. I didn't consider 50K a marathon at that time, so because I knew I could run 50. I could run 42, 50 was doable. So I was interested in more. How far can I go? So I signed up for this crazy ultra marathon in Northern Ireland.
Okay.
Starts in the Giants Causeway at Northern Ireland. It runs along the coast. It ran through forest, like sheep path, goat, just insanity. Bog. There was like 10 kilometers of bog. You ran across a beach, upstairs along cliffs. I ran with sheep for about a kilometer or two.
Just ran with sheep, right?
Yeah, just hurting them. They put up with me, I think. So that was my first one, 100K. So
nice.
It was it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I've always
did another one.
I've always liked the smaller, more personal races.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest one I was ever in was the Toronto, my first marathon, Toronto Scotiabank Waterfront in 2005. And almost all the rest of my runs have been a little more cozy, smaller ones. The Ontario Ultra Series was my social club for a few years, right?
Yeah, I like smaller as well, and in races I think what I was saying the other day to my partner was I like exploring, especially in a trail and stuff like that. So I like seeing things as opposed to, if you give me an ultra marathon that's 16 loops of the same thing, no, I really want to. I like exploring. Like, give me something to do or see. That's how I am. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And now a transition to race walker kind of recently. How did that manifest?
The pandemic.
Oh, okay.
So I was.
That recently.
Yeah. Actually,
okay.
Yeah, I've been running for a long time. During my track days, I think we fooled around in a hotel hallway, like pretending to race walk. So that was like my only real stint at it. I think when I was maybe in my mid,
because you're not allowed to run in the hotel.
We could walk.
You can walk.
I think I was in my mid 20s. I tried it like just for a little bit because I had been injured or something, but nothing real. So it was the pandemic. All the races. I mean, if you can remember, everything just was canceled. There's nothing going on. So I was trying to sort of give myself something to do, and I actually ended up. I did an interview with Evan Dunphy for my podcast, and we chatted. And it's always sort of been interested in the race walk. I found it very, very interesting. I never really tried it, and So I interviewed Evan Dunphy and I said, okay, I wonder how fast I can race walk a kilometer. Like, how
Hmm.
fast could you do that? So I had a general idea of the technique. I looked it up, I did all the stuff, and I think I walked a kilometer. This is like the end of 2019. And I managed to walk, I think, a kilometer in 5:49 for a
Wow.
kilometer. And I thought that was okay. Didn't think much of it. And then the pandemic kept continuing. And I think I had sort of looked at some masters competitions and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, I wonder how fast I could walk something. I'm still
Hmm.
running, but I haven't got anything to train for. So 2020, I started race walking just on my own, got advice from everybody. Evan Dunphy gave me advice. I just videos online, and I would just go out and I would be that guy wiggling and doing the whole race walk thing, just out on the
Hmm.
streets. Um, and I went from really struggling with the technique, trying to figure things out, straight leg and trying to keep one foot in the ground. And how does this
Hmm.
work? And then 7 months later, I did my first competition and then broke the Ontario 5K record at the time. So,
In your
so I
first
did five.
competition again.
Yeah, I walked
Yeah, nice.
5K in 25:36.
Yeah. That's that's awesome. That's really close to my best 5K time when I started running like 10 years ago.
Yeah, so now I have fun because it's my partner and I, Nina. She will we've run together, but now she will run and I will race walk beside her when we go out
Yeah.
for a lot of times for training. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's neat. Oh man. Um, let's see. Yeah, sharing your struggles and victories on social media. And we talked before we got together on this recording, we talked about our both of our, I guess, experience with social media and the the second look, I guess, at it from a little newer perspective and what's the message. And you've kind of taken a bit of a break from social media and what is that? How did that come about and where's that going?
sure, yeah. Like I said, I struggle with social media, like we talked about before, and how social media and connecting with people really helped me when I was struggling. Um,
Mhm.
and part of like my therapy to help myself was opening up and talking about my mental health struggles in terms of how I was dealing stuff, trying to be a dad, struggling just to find meaning and everything else, trying to find ways to maintain my mental health. So connecting with people on
Mhm.
social media was great. I would share things, I would blog and share it, I would connect with other people, I would connect with other dads who struggled as well.
Mhm.
People like yourself who also had reasons to talk about mental health. And I found it really a positive community out there, mental health, but also the running community, very positive.
Mhm.
And so for many years, I used that as like my platform to share about myself. Um, but what I found was over the years, as I got better, because my anxiety and my depression is not something that's chronic in terms of it's very event based for me.
Okay.
Um, it might be up and down, but for me it was an event in my life that really brought me to a low. So it's not something I always deal with. I'm very aware of it now, and I try to make sure that I have tools to deal with life when it gets difficult. But that was a very dark moment for me. Um, so as life got better, I managed to straighten a few things out. I'm quite happy now and have been. Sometimes the focus got away from me. My social media ended up being a lot about almost more about my running and competitiveness. I
Mhm.
would still share mental health; it's still very important to me. But I think how I was using it changed.
Mhm.
And more recently, I wrote a piece, a four-piece article actually on sort of race day anxiety for iRun magazine,
Mhm.
where I was talking about the struggle I had when I started getting back into being competitive, and realized that um, part of what I've been doing for a lot of times in my race and some of the problems I have because I'm very hard on myself. I feel like I have something to prove.
Hmm.
And I've worked through that. I'm much better with things. And I'm still sort of trying to get to a point where I can go just to have myself be okay with how I do. But I was using social media almost as trying to show people and prove things. If I went for a run, I had to show people I went for a run.
Hmm.
I did this time. I'm going to show people. It's like I was trying to tell people, look at me. Look at me. I am good. I am good.
Hmm.
I am fast. Because I needed that.
Yeah, and
And then
once you've shown people that you're fast, you have to not disappoint them, right?
yeah, and it becomes about other people and not yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
So I just took a pause and said, I'd like to focus on myself for a bit, but in a different way. Take a pause from social media, slow the pace down, go out and do a run and just enjoy it, not have to worry about taking 6 pictures I'm going to post 5 minutes later.
Hmm. Hmm.
Enjoy being out with the family, do some writing and share if I feel like it, but just slow things down a little bit. And if I jump back on, it'll be more focused, I think,
Hmm.
and maybe less quantity, more quality if I
Hmm.
post something, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people um, are taking a look at what their motivations are with social media, what their activities are, what their goals are, right? Especially considering all of the revelations in the past year or two with the big companies and what their goals are, which are really clear now, but weren't
Yes,
before.
yes.
But it's not to say all social media is bad. I mean, it's a tool that's brought fellowship um, and community to a lot of people that might otherwise struggle with that, right? Just by geography and so on.
Yeah, I
So,
don't think we should blame necessarily the medium. I think it's how it's used.
mhm.
Same with everything, right? I mean, you can spend 6 hours looking through your social media feed, or you can spend 5 or 10 minutes a day.
Yeah.
It's all about not forgetting what's important, I think, in your life. I think so.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
evaluating things every once in a while.
Hmm. For
Yeah.
sure. So you're also a writer.
Yeah, that's sort of God. Yeah, like I mentioned in the beginning, I have. Uh, when people say they're bored, I don't know what they're talking about. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. Okay, you
Yeah.
don't even want to know half the projects. I've got 2 book projects on the go. Before I came on with you, I was thinking up a script to write for this. Don't even ask. Yeah, I'm always writing. Always writing.
All right. What
Yeah.
have you published so far?
I've sort of published 3 books. The first one was kind of just a collection of thoughts, actually. I really wanted to look into the self-publication because
Okay.
what I realized after going through, trying to get some publishers was it was less about making money, that type of thing. It was more about I just wanted to share it and get it out there and see it.
Right.
So the first one is to really just was a lot of thoughts that I had shared, especially when I was dealing with mental health. So
Okay.
short thoughts and poems. I published that. And then shortly thereafter, I did a collection of profiles of runners that I have
Okay.
that I interviewed over the years for Canadian Running Magazine, for I Run,
Hmm.
and for ones I had done just myself, along with a collection of a few stories.
Hmm.
Put that all
Okay.
together and to share some of these sort of neat people I've met over the years. So that's my second one. And then more recently, a couple of years now, I guess. Time flies. One of the funnest projects I've probably ever done is I teamed up with a young runner and artist in the Ottawa area, and he's sort of a son of friends of mine. And I wanted to do a story for what I call running dads,
Okay.
and then kids who run as well, or who have parents who run. So it's called Run Daddy Run. It's a kid's book about a dad who runs, who's trying to explain it to their children. So
Hmm.
I did the writing, it's a little bit of rhyming, a lot of fun. There's a bit of a sort of intro where I talk to the kids and the dad at the start.
Okay.
And then Evan Raz, who did the illustrations, did some amazing, colorful illustrations in. So I'm really proud of that
Nice.
one. It's
Oh,
good
that's
fun.
neat.
Yeah. So, and other than that, I'm always writing articles and stuff like that for, I've interviewed lots of fun people. Ben Johnson. You have to talk on the phone with John Turner, the former prime minister, who
Oh,
was a
wow.
sprinter in his day.
Wow.
And just lots of cool folks. I love that.
Yeah, yeah, people have interesting stories.
Oh yeah.
Through People Talks, I've had the opportunity, and through Canal Pursuit, the opportunity to talk to a lot of people whose story we just hear the little scratch on the surface, right? There are so many really rich stories, and people don't have we don't hear enough of them.
No, people
Like
are
you said, John
fascinating.
Turner was a sprinter. Who knew that?
Yeah, no, there's some fascinating stuff out there. I find people very fascinating. So everybody's, and oftentimes running was just an excuse to talk about other things too. So
yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
So
one of the things that was caused the inception of People Talks is the pandemic and the effects of the pandemic on on the mental health of so many people, not just those that have already been struggling, but everybody. It's a strange thing. So I know that we already talked about race walking. How has the pandemic? How have you seen the pandemic or the effects of the pandemic manifested in what you're doing?
it was I think like everybody else, it was a real shift. I mean, I've been working remotely during the pandemic, and at the start, I got laid off. So I was laid off for probably about the first 5-6 months. So just one of those like out of left field. I had been on a contract waiting for them to sort of bring me on permanently where I was working. I work in communications, and yeah, just it hit, and I saw it rolling, and I'm going, oh, I know where this is going. Like this isn't good. I still didn't expect to be laid off, but I kind of saw it coming. So to be laid off during the pandemic, when people were working remotely and things weren't going well, and then thinking about trying to bring in money, and even with the CERB, the funding support from the government, you still have to think about, okay, how much do I have to pay back? What's this going to go on? Bills.
Yeah.
So it was a point where actually I utilized that toolkit that I talked about, that I managed to, because I don't have to deal with, like crisis all the time. For me, it's depression is not always in the background, but because I had gone through it, I knew there are things I could do, and one of them was staying active. I'm very goal oriented, so I said, you know what, I can only control so much. I can't control that. I'll sort things out. I'll get enough money to pay the bills and work on the priorities. And I would get up in the morning and I would do the job search, do some connections, network with folks. And then I'd just get out and get active. I'd go for a hike, go for a race walk, go for a run, keep active, focus on things, and just really do what I could. And that's about it. There isn't much else you could do. And I think a lot of people were going through the same thing. There were always worst cases. But there was definitely, I think the first year, there was a lot of stress out there. It was a pretty stressful environment.
Yeah. I think there was so much unknown. I think a ton of people expected in March that this thing would be taken care of. We're in a highly technological age, and this thing would be taken care of 100 years after the Spanish flu. It would be 10% as long, because we're 100 times more advanced than we were back then, right? So I think, and me included, I expected we'd be back up midsummer or so. We'd be finished this thing, and we'll be back to normal. Midsummer 2020.
Well, now it's changed permanently how people work too. So I think it's made a permanent shift for people working from home and working remotely. I think that people saw on the horizon, and now for some people it's great, and for other people, it can be more stress as well, or a difficult working environment. So,
Hmm.
yeah, mental health is, I think, extremely important during the pandemic. It's
Yeah.
there's good and there's bad, but it's
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
being able to balance mind and body is definitely important right now.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think we've seen in the last federal election, and we'll probably see in the provincial election too, the phrase mental health be on the tongues of most people that are running for election. We have yet to see how much of that is lip service, but it's it's definitely a popular topic. And I mean, us guys talking about it amongst ourselves and talking with people out in public is, I think it's helping. It's making people a little less uncomfortable about mental health conversations, right? And that's the stigma thing. Make people less uncomfortable, and they're more likely to talk about it. Over the water cooler at work, or the virtual water cooler, across the
Yeah.
boardroom table, across the floor of Parliament as well. So,
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think there is a bit of a gender divide, or at least a difference. From my
mhm,
experience, of course, it's just my perspective, but I found that there's still some work to do with a lot of men not feeling completely comfortable, whether it's acknowledging or opening up or sharing.
mhm,
So I think if they're not talking, at least maybe they'll feel not alone
mhm,
when people, we with these talks and that thing. And my one thing about government would be, if I had to make a comment, I just wish, if they talk about mental health, I just wish they would show by example. I'm just tired of all the
yeah,
dirty games and politics and stuff
yeah,
like that. I'd like to see
yeah,
someone
no
just who's
kidding.
honest and can talk positively and say, you know what, this person, I've got a different view. This is what we believe in. This is where we're going,
Mhm.
and do it in a way that isn't trash talking someone else and
Yeah,
isn't always sort of bashing and looking for that dirt on the other person.
yeah, yeah.
I'm glad we're at least not in the United States, but I think our southern neighbors have encouraged that type of talk and behavior. I don't think that helps
Mhm.
mental health either. So
No, 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 not at all. And there's no, I don't know. I was brought up to believe that you'll never get ahead by pushing someone else backwards, right? You don't
yeah,
get
I
higher
agree.
by knocking someone down. So
Yeah, I
build other
agree.
people up. And one thing you mentioned is some tools. Do you think now this is we have to recognize that everybody is unique, but what are some of the tools that you've found have worked for you when you're struggling, or when you start to feel yourself getting into a dark place or going down the rabbit hole?
Sure. I guess there's some really simple ones. And I think that's the thing that'll surprise people, that sometimes they're not earth-shattering, concepts or ideas. A lot of
Mhm,
times, the hardest part is actually just doing them.
mhm,
I think when you're in the really dark place, like I talked about before, it's that cycle where anxiety and depression wants to keep you there and stop you from doing things, which makes you feel worse about yourself, and then you get stuck in it. So sometimes one of my first tools is just do something.
mhm,
It can be going up to get a cup of tea. It can be getting out the door for a walk. I know that sounds stupid, but
mhm,
sometimes just staying where you are in bed or not doing anything, it feels safe, but you're not moving, you're not going anywhere. It's not
mhm,
changing how things are, but making that one step, breaking that cycle can do a
mhm.
huge amount.
Right.
Um, Remembering that you're never alone, you're not the only one that struggles, as another easy thing. Yeah, sounds stupid, but when you're there, we've all been there, and
Mhm,
when you're in the dark place, so you're the only one. It's just you.
mhm,
That's how it gets. Remembering that, and then something that goes along with that, making that one small step, is reaching out to someone. That can be one of your steps, but reaching out to someone. If you
mhm,
can do that, even those three small things, remember you're not alone, doing something small, reaching out to someone, that can start you on the path to realizing that you don't want to be where you're at, and you want to be somewhere else. You don't want to be in that dark place anymore. And if you can get out of that, then you're almost halfway there. But if you never get out of that cycle, you just tend to spin further down. I think those are one of those key steps, at least for me. And when I took small steps, I would get out. And then if I was able to get out, I could think about being active and running or doing something. And once the endorphins got flowing, and once I was able to sweat, it's my place to think as well. So I'd often come back with a clearer mind and able to look at things with a different and better perspective. And it kind of went from there. There's lots of other things where I'll write down my thoughts. I might talk to folks, and then one of the tools I often do too is still sharing. So I think those small things, I think, are the things that I would try and pass along to people.
I heard an interview recently with it was talking about the climate accord, or the climate summit in Glasgow, and the frustration, concern, fear, I guess, that our youth around the world are feeling right now, that they're inheriting something that's kind of broken, right? And what can they do? And there's a lot of frustration that it's lip service, and there's not anything constructive happening, and all of that. But one of the students of a person being interviewed said something like, what's going to help us with this? Less doing and more doing. A really simple thing. It's absolutely not easy, but it's one little step. Those first couple small actions can really have a big impact.
Yeah, completely. I think, and just like what we're doing now is just one person talking to encourage someone else to do it, or someone else will see it. Hey, that's great. Yeah, I'll do that too. Or leading by example, showing that something can succeed. And all of a sudden, instead of 10 people doing it, you've got 100, and you've got 10,000, and then you've got 100,000 people doing something. So those small changes you might only see at the beginning are going to be big changes if you've got enough people involved in doing it.
Yep, for sure. What else is going on here? I have no more. I have no more questions.
That's all good. It's all good. It's been a good chat. There's so much to talk about: the pandemic. We talk race walking, mental health, all my crazy adventures. I'm always planning adventures, and I think all those adventures, are things that help me mentally too. I think people should always be part of. I think people get down in the dumps too, especially during the pandemic, or even just in life in general. I think finding those adventures around you, they don't have to be going to Everest. They don't have to be, often 100-kilometer ultra marathons. That's just for some of us nuts. But looking for those things in life, go live life, fill your life full of stuff. There's so much to do. I think we often get caught up in so much of the dark, negative stuff where, take a day, learn to juggle. Go check out the waterfall down the road or something like that. There's so many cool things to check out. So for me, it's always planning the next adventure or what craziness I can get up to. It keeps me going.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of which, you've got a couple things that are on your I wouldn't say bucket list. I'll say to-do list.
Yes, they're on my to-do. They're on the radar. Since the pandemic, let's just say it's been a complete shit show. So nothing is for certain in the next little while, but there's a World Masters in Finland that I would like to take my skinny butt out and see if I can race walk. I'm fairly competitive. So I think we've got a good Canadian team. So that would be a blast in Finland.
All right.
See if that happens. And I've had it on my bucket list for a few years now to try and run Hadrian's Wall, which runs it's sort of north in England, so almost sort of
Hmm.
it's almost the border of sort of like England and Scotland.
Hmm.
Um, and it's built by the Romans and runs across from one coast to the other. So it's about 100 miles. So I
Hmm.
figure that's about a day's worth of running. So I figure if I can somehow fandangle that and you know get them to pick me up on the other side, I would love to see if I can make that happen. So I mean, why
There,
not, right?
there might be a pub or some haggis or something at the end of it. Who knows?
Something like that, exactly, and maybe probably some ibuprofen. I'm thinking.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I've we talked yesterday a little bit about goals, and I think they play a big part in helping us, or giving us a reason, I guess, to swing our hips out of bed and put our feet on the floor in the morning. And that's always the first step to getting out for a run, right?
I think so. It's goals and meaning. I think people in general are always looking for something to help them get through life, to find meaning in things, whether that's running, the next adventure, religion,
Hmm.
a hobby, a passion. It's what keeps you going, what keeps you waking up and seeing, seeing the sun more than the clouds in the sky, that type of thing.
Hmm.
So yeah, we're always looking for something.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, I think that's about it. We're going to say goodbye. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule and out of your writing time to talk with me. I really appreciate it.
I love chatting, and I hope people find the story interesting. And I'll be checking out the rest of the talks you've done too. I've checked out a couple already. So if
All
people
right.
find this one interesting, go check out the other people that have been on this show.